Folks, welcome back to another edition of the ISD Official Visit. I'm your host, Christian McCullum, and I'm back with my man, Jamie Uyeyama. Jamie, what's going on, man?
Nothing much, man. We're excited about the season going. Hopefully, Notre Dame finishes 11-1, gets a shot at a playoff, and finish out this class.
I like these people that are scared of the playoff. I am not scared of a playoff. Notre Dame
Get
goes in
in
there and
this
gets
year.
beat by 40 by Georgia. Who cares? Who cares? I just don't understand it. And this is the year that you could actually sneak in. There's
Yeah,
no other good teams. I don't know. I understand people are like, well, if we get beat by 40, it's gonna hurt recruiting. Blah blah blah. Like, you're not gonna win if you're scared to play the games. You know what I mean? I will never get
yeah.
that.
Well, you play Wake Forest in a bowl game. I mean, you rather play Alabama. Like even if you lose, like you rather be in that situation.
And how's Notre Dame done in the postseason game so far in recent memory, like the last 15 years? Not very good, right? How are they recruiting right now?
They're recruiting pretty good, and they
Yeah.
haven't won a lot of they won a lot of Music City bowls and things
Mm-hmm.
like that, but they haven't won any of these other big. I mean, you got to get to the dance to before anything else, and they've been to the dance 2 out of the 3 years, right? So
And getting throttled isn't hurting them. It's not, at least
no,
that's my opinion.
yeah,
So, Jamie, Notre Dame got some big news last Thursday with the somewhat surprise commitment from Emil Wagner, which came out of nowhere. I mean, Notre Dame was always in the race. I shouldn't say it came out of nowhere, but Kentucky seemed like the team positioned to get the commitment, and he didn't let anyone on one way or the other. So it was like everyone was kind of going in blind. But don't let anyone tell you, Notre Dame didn't even know he was going to commit until a couple minutes before he went live with his announcement. And Emil didn't even know till that morning, he told me. So, why is he such a big get for Notre Dame, and what kind of player is he?
I mean, his brother didn't even know his brother works for Kentucky, so I mean, he did a pretty good job keeping it secret. It looked like his mom was surprised at the announcement too. So, I mean, it's a huge get. I think you look at what need is always something, right, in terms of hitting your numbers in the class. And I think Notre Dame needs to land four guys in this class. And I think if you look at what they have at the other things, the other guys in the class, you have two interior guys in Tanona and Ashton Craig, and then Chan is probably a tackle. Ty Chan is probably a tackle, but he might be a guard. I think Emil Wagner is a pure tackle. So they got their pure tackle in the class, and boy, does he have a high upside. I am super high on this guy. I think he has incredible athletic potential, a great frame. And he plays mean too. He plays mean too. I think this kid, if he probably weighed 20 more pounds right now, people would view him much differently. But I think the physical development, like I think that's going to come with him.
All right, so you tell me, anyone that follows on Irish Sports Daily, they'll ask me, what about this guy? I just defer to Jamie. Ask me how good this guy is, I defer to Jamie. So you tell me if I'm wrong on a couple things. First, and I'm not talking about Emil here. When I think about an offensive lineman who needs to put on weight, he's tall, he's thin, he's super athletic, he's a basketball player, I usually just have this picture in my head of like kind of not soft, but like not a crazy aggressive guy, just kind of a good pass blocker type deal. Is that not again? Not talking about Emil here for a second. Well, I guess my point is Emil's not that to my mind. He's the first part of that, but he's also pretty aggressive. Is that accurate?
I think that's very accurate, right? Like, I mean, you just see this guy knock this guy in the mouth right here, going to the second level, right? The guy plays violently. He has violence to his game, right? And then you see him run down the field like this. Like, how many offensive tackles do you see, hustling down the field? This looks like he's a receiver down here blocking for a screen. Like, I mean, he's freakish athletic for a guy playing that position. And I think for Notre Dame fans, the automatic they think of basketball player, light on his feet, left tackle. They think Ronnie Stanley. That's always who comes up with that. And and if you were going to say Emil and you were going to compare him to Ronnie, you would say he's a meaner Ronnie Stanley because he has all those kind of traits that Ronnie Stanley had that made him great and made him such an elite left tackle. Sixth pick in the draft. One of these guys who's an All-American. But when you combine it with, I mean, this guy wants to finish guys. You see him bring the pop in his hands, And you combine that there, and then you got a chance to be even more special than Ronnie Stanley, in my opinion.
Yeah, that screen highlight, I was like, where is he? That's not him? Oh my
Yeah.
God, that's him. 40 yards downfield. What kind of development have you seen him? I mean, we're watching senior highlight film here. What have you seen from him? What kind of progression has he made from sophomore, junior year to what we're seeing now?
Well, I thought one of the things that he's always shown that kind of like proclivity for violence, right? He's always been a guy who's finished. And so, and that's what you always want to see. You don't want to see, it's not that it's bad that you kind of develop that over time, but if someone has that when you watch them as a sophomore, then that's in them. That's the way that they want to play, right? That's the way that they've been taught to play, right? So he's always had that. But I think the big thing with him is technically, although he still has a lot of room to grow in pass protection, he's someone who has gotten a lot better, like way better with his punch, just a little bit more efficient with his feet, just plays with better leverage than he used to. So, a guy getting used to his body, getting used to the position, growing technically. And that's everything that you want to see from a guy from one year to the next.
Is that easier for a kid that has these tools, this athleticism, this basketball background to develop the pass pro to sharpen that up than it would be to kind of try to pull out that mean streak like you're saying?
I think so. I've always found it that way whenever I'm evaluating offensive linemen. Like, you just don't see it that often where all of a sudden, because it's just hard for a guy to flip a switch, right? To be that way. Especially because as you know too, most of these kids for Notre Dame, and Emil Wagner is no different. Like, he's a nice kid. He's a nice kid, comes from a good family, not a guy that you would think that, probably not a guy who's going to fight on the street or anything like that. Not one of those kind of guys, but when you get him on the field, I mean, he plays it like a street fight, right? And there's just some guys that have that. And I mean, it's a weird analogy, but my nephew right now, he's this huge kid he's age 8. He's bigger than some 11-year-olds, right? But he doesn't have this mentality. Maybe he'll get it later, but he's just a gentle giant, right? He's out there on the soccer field. This guy, he doesn't want to, he's too big, so he doesn't want to hurt anybody or whatever. But, there's other kids out there who are his size that are like literally running people over, right? And that's just something that's either inside of them or develops when they're young, or, sometimes it comes later, but usually by the time kids are in high school, if you don't have that, it's very hard to develop that in college.
Yeah, so there you have it. Recruits, parents, coaches. If you got a problem with Jamie, he's just telling the truth. He's calling as he sees it. It's not personal. It could be his 8-year-old nephew who's got to get tougher and meaner. This guy's
shots.
All over him.
He's taking shots. I'm going to send this to my sister right now. She's not going to be happy.
Oh, man, I'm sure his father and his youth guy, they're all going to be on top of it. Who is this guy? You're going to jeopardize his future.
Oh, yeah.
Scholarships on the line. We'll play this back. It's a big question mark. Will he or won't he be on there? And then be able to kind of develop this mean streak. So what do you think overall? How do you say about how Quinn has been doing here? Like, in terms of recruiting, how do you think he's done with this class?
I mean, you have to say that he's done well again, really. And really, since he started, the one thing that everybody questioned about Jeff Quinn, right? It's funny because now people say that, they question his coaching more than they question his recruiting. But when he was hired, that was the big thing, right? Like, how's this guy going to recruit? He was at Buffalo. When he was at Cincinnati, he was always signing 2-star kids. Like, how's he going to be when he has to actually recruit guys? And the one thing you can definitely say about Jeff Quinn is, when he's recruiting, the recruits like him. They like him. They like his personality. He's able to connect with these kids. And I mean, look at how many guys that they've signed that are like, you can say they've missed out on some of the top guys, but they've had, landed like pretty much like, blue chip four stars all along the way. Right. And this was another one where it was over. Like, people were like, he's going to Kentucky, right? Like, no one gave Notre Dame a chance. And I mean, I don't even know if you want to say that Jeff Quinn is like a closer or whatever, but he's presenting what Notre Dame is and what it has done for these offensive linemen. And I think that's all anyone wants, because, if it's like, if you coach offensive line or tight end at Notre Dame, it's like, don't screw it up. Like, just present and say, this is what we do, and you're going to do it. And you see that with John McNulty, who's done a terrific job as well. And you've seen it with Jeff Quinn. And it's hard to complain about the results.
Yeah, you talked about Aamil being such a nice kid. I think Notre Dame, I'm sure they picked up on that, but I think that was one of the reasons why they probably felt they had a chance. This isn't a drama kid. Like, he's not like into it, trying to, tell people who he's thinking about and, trying to get attention to himself. And like I said, I asked him, is your brother being at Kentucky a big deal? And he said, yeah, it is. It's a big deal. But at the same time, he said everyone that was just assuming he was going to go to Kentucky was speculating. He didn't say that. He wasn't behind the scenes promising silent commitments or anything like that. And just a real stand-up guy. Like you said, he came from a stand-up family. I think Notre Dame fans will get to hear from him soon. And I think they're going to be impressed with the way he presents himself. Super mature. And those are the kind of, the characteristics that end up leading, guys that end up having successful careers, because he's settled. He's not going to, he's not going to get a big head. He's not going to expect things to come to him early. He values hard work, education. The religious aspect was a huge reason why I chose Notre Dame. I mean, this is an all-around great fit.
Yeah, and the one thing that is probably a misconception about a lot of offensive linemen is that, they think they're like big, like sloppy, like dumb guys or whatever. But these are some of the most intelligent guys on the team. And they've always been like that, especially at Notre Dame, right? And I mean, shots fired at defensive linemen, but that's more like defensive linemen. And I'm a defensive lineman, so I'm taking a shot at myself there. But I'm just saying, like, offensive linemen, they're like, they think about the game different, because you have to be able to almost be intellectual about the game. And that's kind of the vibe that I think that a lot of the offensive linemen that Notre Dame signs, or at least all the guys that work out. So when Notre Dame signs a kid who maybe doesn't really fit that, not all those guys have worked out at Notre Dame, right? So I would say, personality is a big part of it. And that's why I think too, Emil Wagner has a chance to really, really succeed and be one of these like great players for Notre Dame.
Very cerebral offensive lineman, and he fits the bill. Okay, Jamie, as always, really appreciate it, man. Thanks. You read Jamie's full breakdowns of Aamil and everything else on irishsportsdaily.com. Thanks a lot, Jamie. As always, do a great job.
Thanks, Chris.